I'd like to call this meeting of the Village of Pinehurst Board of Adjustment to order. It's Thursday, June 6, 2019, and the time is 5:34 p.m. This is a regularly scheduled meeting with notice properly given. I'd like to notate that we have a quorum present here today with all 5 of our designated voting members present: David Kelly, Jules Latham, Mike Marsh, Leah Santawasso, and Joel Schreiberg. As a reminder, our procedure this evening is being videotaped, and speaking into your microphone is important. So all here today can be heard and all information can be recorded. As our first matter of business, do I have a motion to approve the minutes of May 2nd, 2019?
So moved.
Second.
A motion has been made and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That motion has been carried, and the minutes of May 2nd, 2019 have been approved. We have a request to flip the order of our 2 public hearings this evening. On our agenda, public hearing number 2 was listed for the variance for 5 Firestone Drive. That we're going to hear that hearing first, and public hearing number 1, which is the impervious requirement, surface requirement for the Pinehurst Elementary, will be our public hearing number 2. At this time, do I have a motion to recess from our regular meeting and enter into public hearing number 2, which will be happening first, and that is the property at 5 Firestone Drive?
So moved.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, at this time, I'd like to call forward all who would like to offer testimony for what is now designated public hearing number 1, the variance application for 5 Firestone Drive. If you can come forward to the microphone to be sworn in, please. Okay, please raise your right hand. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Thank you very much. I'm going to ask at this time if anyone on the board needs to recuse themselves because of ex parte communications, conflict of interest, financial interest in the outcome, or who have already made up their mind about this proceeding. I believe, Joel, you wanted to make a statement.
Yes, I've had some conversation with the applicant regarding them bringing adjacent property owners and somebody from Pinehurst to speak at this, since if those folks aren't present, anything they wrote to us is not admissible.
Okay, did you discuss the merits of the matter at all?
No.
Thank you. Before we proceed, as a reminder, I'd like to let the board and the audience with us know that we can only base our decisions on competent material and substantial evidence that's in the record. At this time, I'd like to read an additional statement about evidence, given the evidentiary materials that were presented to us by the applicant. This is a quasi-judicial hearing, and with that in mind, evidence may only be admitted without objection, and if the evidence appears to be sufficiently trustworthy and was admitted under such circumstances that it was reasonable for the decision-making board to rely upon it. With that in mind, there were 2 pieces of evidence submitted by the applicant. The first was a letter submitted on, hold on, sorry, I didn't switch my packets. Give me a minute. There was a letter submitted on behalf of the applicant by Mr. Farron and the resort. Sorry, I'm looking for it now. I'd like to suggest that that particular letter be admitted into evidence. It bears hallmarks of authenticity. We've certainly had evidence of this type delivered to us in the past. It's on letterhead, it's signed. I have no problem admitting that particular piece of evidence without the author present. Does anyone on the board feel differently? Okay, great. There was a second email that was submitted to us by a Mr. John Reeves. Is Mr. Reeves present? Okay. This was actually submitted to Lynn Anderson on behalf of the applicant. Mr. Reeves is identified as the chairman of the Fairwoods ARB. I assume that is the Architectural Review Board. This particular email, we're unable to authenticate in any way, and it would be my recommendation that this email not be admitted into evidence. Does anyone on the board feel differently? Okay. And those are my only comments in regard to the evidence before us. So at this time, I'd like to turn the floor over to Alex to present the application on behalf of the village.
Okay, thank you. The purpose of this public hearing is to receive testimony for a variance request from Section 9.2A, Table of Dimensional Requirements for the property at 5 Firestone Drive, further identified as Moore County Parcel ID Number 000-25019. This property is located within the R30 Medium Density Residential Zoning District. Specifically, the owners, Mary and Richard Reinheiler, are requesting a variance from the 60-foot lakefront golf course setback to allow for the construction of an addition that will encroach approximately 12 feet into the required setback. Ms. Chair, you have spoken to some of the applicant and submitted materials. In addition to that, there is a staff report that you guys have, and enter that into the record now as well. It describes a little bit further in the request and background and the analysis of the surrounding property. The current golf course lakefront setback is 60 feet. The property is bound on the south by golf course number 7, and it is surrounded on all other sides by other existing single-family residential development within the Fairwoods Estates. As you can see with the provided materials in the site plan, that the encroachment of this proposed addition would be plus or minus 12 feet. And the action by the Board of Adjustment in considering, you have your standards of review, and also within your packet, and I would like to enter into the record at this point, is your decision letter to help you go through those standards of review for this application, and pending action by the Zoning Board of Adjustment can be executed following this meeting. Staff does not formulate a formal recommendation on this, as this is a quasi-judicial meeting, and your decision should be based on the facts submitted to you and within the hearing itself.
Thank you very much. At this time, if the applicants would like to come forward and make a statement about their application? If you can just begin with your name and address, and then you can go into your statement. Thank you. That's fine if you prefer. Or there's the mic behind too, wherever you'd like to be.
Thank you. Good evening. And first I would like to introduce myself. I'm Lynn Anderson with Anderson Architecture in Southern Pines, and we are the designers of this project for the Reinthalers. Let me, if you'll allow me to tell you a little about the project. The Reinthalers came to us in the spring, and they want to add on to their existing house, and the intention was to develop a space, a family room. We're calling it a family room, a family gathering space for their extended family of 12, with a few utilitarian spaces along with that. The first thing that we said to the Reinthalers was that we needed a survey, a property survey. While we were waiting for the survey to be delivered, we did a little preliminary thinking about how best to add on to the existing house. When we received the survey, we realized that the property configuration, along with the 60-foot setback from the golf course, presented us with a real challenge. We felt that we couldn't create the addition, a suitable addition on the back of the house and staying within that 60-foot setback. And this property is quite unique because I call it kind of an inverted property line that comes into the property, and that's the point from which the 60-foot setback needs to be measured. So we attempted to kind of consider, could we do an addition, a reasonable addition, and stay within that setback? But a lot of different thinking goes into the mix for that, and I think that we were intent on making it a contribution to the existing house, making the addition well-suited. We wanted to keep it, I say, conservative and not oversized. We wanted to maintain the views from the existing living room and breakfast room, which look out towards the golf course. And so we planned on the addition to be connected by a corridor with powder room and entry, and we chose almost the only logical place in the house to make that connection through the existing pantry room. So the addition technically comes off of the garage wing of the house. And then we have a short connector and a corridor, and the family room is at the end of that. We studied how best to orient the family room, best for views and light control and sun control. The Reinthalers also kind of directed us that they like their house very much, and so we were trying to design and develop an addition that would go with the existing house. So we were careful to maintain a narrow width for that connector so that we could effectively deal with the roofs, a narrow width for the family room proper, so that roof line didn't extend any higher than the roof line at the master bedroom wing, which is also below the main ridge line on the existing house. We were also, in placing the addition, we were conscious of the neighbors and could tell where their views were, and generally careful about blocking or coming any farther forward than the neighbor's house, which it doesn't, even though you can see on that site plan, what we've marked as the primary setback is the 60-foot setback taken from that inverted corner. And what we are proposing is a variance to that. If we can bring the setback to 48 feet. So we're asking for a variance of 12 feet to bring that addition forward on the site. Again, we were careful about the proportions and the shape of the addition, and most especially, I think, the addition with respect to the neighbors. Both of the houses on either side, they extend forward of the addition on their sites, so the addition wouldn't in any way, encumber their views to the golf course. And Also, I know that that 60-foot setback must be in there for a number of reasons, but I think probably primarily so that your property or your building doesn't get in the way of someone else's sightline down a fairway. And perhaps also there's some concern about golf balls, damaging the property or a person in their backyard. So with that in mind, we feel like there's absolutely no problem with this site because that the Reinthalers' property is at the T end of hole number 18. And so there's, I can't imagine how bad a golfer would be that he could hit the ball or pop it up over in that direction. So I think that we're fairly safe on both of those two counts. And if I would like to, if I may, I've got photographs of the house from the front and from the rear, and I also have a letter from the neighbors.
As with the letter from the Community Association, we can't accept the letters from the neighbors unless the neighbors are here to speak specifically to the fact that this is their opinion, this is what they wrote. However, the photos, did either of you take them?
I did.
Well, we'd love to see them. Thank you.
Pass them out if I can. Be aware of the general look of the house so that you could assess or imagine the addition and have an idea of what we're trying to do with it.
Noticing in the photo you have of the backyard, there appears to be a yard stake. Is that significant? That's the property line. Okay, thank you.
I think also in your package, you'll see a little sketch, which is our rendering of the addition as it is planned to date, and to give you some sense of what that would look like from the golf course. I also want to mention, you'll see on the site plan, we have indicated a retaining wall. And the purpose of that is to be able to keep the addition at the same finished floor level as the house and not take steps up. There's a fair amount of drop from the golf course side to the far side, the Firestone Drive side on this property. And so we would like to, we'll end up having to keep the grade down about where it is at the back of the house now. So
But that retaining wall does not exist now.
no, it does not.
What about the patio?
The patio does exist now. There's a, excuse me, the one on the site plan, the new one, that's a new one, but it connects to their existing patio. If I should have labeled it on the site plan.
So the variance really isn't 12 feet. The variance would be less if the retaining wall is going to be a new structure. And I believe the building inspector would classify that retaining wall as a structure.
I assume that you're correct about that. However, in the UDO, and I was kind of, this is what I was going on, there's a section that addresses retaining walls, and it says that the retaining walls can be built and they have to be within the accessory building setback, which on a golf course side is only 30 feet. And on the site plan, I marked where the accessory setback is, so you could see that we're not encroaching on that with the golf course, with the retaining wall.
Ms. Anderson's statement is correct in reference to development ordinance and retaining walls, and the site plan does delineate the accessory structure setback, which is 30 feet, and then, of course, the 60-foot main lakefront golf course setback is delineated on the plan.
Well, what about the patio extension? The patio that's shown on the drawing that says patio, does that exist now?
No,
Oh, okay.
it does not.
So that also encroaches.
Yes, yes.
And keep in mind, patios are basically accessory structures, so they can be located within the accessory structure setback.
Thank you.
If I see this correctly, as you move, if you will, down that V, you don't get too far down that before you are 60 feet back. The only place you're 48 feet back is at the apex of that V. So moving either side of that, I don't know how many feet. I'd leave that to Mr. Kelly, who's a far better engineer than I am. How many feet down that you'd have to come? I guess what I'm saying is that it appears to me, and you help me here, that only a portion of the addition, not the entire addition, not the backside of the entire addition, requires a variance, that a small portion of that borders the porch requires a variance, not the entire addition. When I say the entire rear of the addition.
I think I follow what you're saying, and I believe that that's correct. If you took that primary setback, you could maintain that until you got to some point in the arc and flatten it out and then pick it back up on the east side.
There to show them what.
Thank you.
So it's only I won't use the word small, it's only a portion of the where you've got addition and porch, it's only a portion of that is infringing on the 60-foot setback. It's not the whole addition. Okay, I just want to make that clear. It's a very small portion. Okay, thank you.
Is there any more questions at this time from the
Yes.
board? Okay.
So the main driver of why we need a variance is what you called the corridor or the connector. So my simple question is, why couldn't we just move that back? What's the purpose of the connector being, it looks like it's about 24 feet long if this is to scale. Why couldn't you have a 12-foot connector and then you wouldn't even have to be here today?
Well, a couple of reasons, and I'll just address the architectural reasons. We're tying into a part of the existing house. I think you can see in the photo, if you look at the photo of the rear, the garage wing has an unusual roof, sort of a gambrel roof almost, but it's hipped and it goes all the way around. So we're kind of limited in where we can attach and come into that. And we could truncate it, but also another thing that we are trying to do with this addition is to preserve the back patio that the Reinthalers have already, which is very nice aspect of their house, and if we bring the new addition in tighter, I think we're going to get into kind of I think maybe if you look at the east elevation or even the west elevation, if you can imagine pulling that entire
There we go. I was looking at that west elevation. Like if you took the addition and it went to the left 12 feet, then you're all done. But, and so I'm getting to the reason why you're asking us to do this. And I think what you're saying is architecturally, balance-wise, it looks a little better, and we save the patio, the existing patio.
Those are two of the best reasons probably
Okay.
that I would say from an architectural standpoint. There programmatically, there are also a few spaces in there.
Oh, understood. Yeah. I understand what's driving it. But, okay, thank you.
Any other questions from the board to either Alex or Ms. Anderson?
Can I just,
Yep, go right ahead.
I play this golf course a lot, and the only reason for the configuration, I'm asking a question, of this lot, is because at the point where those two lines closer to the golf course is where the black tees are for the 18th hole of number 18.
Correct.
And I'm going to not speak for Mr. Farron, but I doubt more than a dozen times a year those black tees are used, and so this will have no, as I see it, playing the course, again, having a familiarity with, will have no impact on anybody playing the course or using the property. Okay.
I would assume not, and that was in our when we addressed your 4 points. I think that we wondered actually when I was thinking about that. It's the configuration of their lot that is kind of driving us to
Yes.
to do this. I almost imagined that it could have originally been laid out a little differently with a flat part and still not encroach on anything to do with the tees or the golf course.
Again, I've played this course
Yeah.
hundreds and hundreds of times and lived there for 20 years, and I never knew this weird configuration. I would also point out, just to the board, if I can do it at this time, that there are only, that I can count on number 7, 2 lots that have this peculiar layout. Other than that, virtually every other lot of the 200-plus lots at the place are rectangles or some form of a rectangle, multi-sided. So this is very unusual, and again, I never realized it was this way.
Right.
I'm
Thank
going-
you for mentioning that, because I think we did. We looked at the course in plan, and we couldn't find, with maybe, as you said, that maybe there's 1 or 2 where something like this happens, but I don't think it's quite to this extreme and doesn't impact the owner's use of their lot quite so much as this does.
I just have a question for you. When you purchased this property, did you have any idea at the time you were going to put an addition on it?
No. At the time that we bought the property, we had a daughter in college, and we had no grandchildren. Now we have 4 grandchildren and 3 married children, and we need more space to entertain them when they come visiting us. We also didn't really appreciate the configuration of the lot until we had a surveyor come and plant those stakes earlier this year. That was quite an awakening for us.
Thank you.
Any other questions for either the village or the applicant? Yeah? Okay. Do I have a motion to close the public hearing and re-enter our regular Board of Adjustment meeting?
Chair.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I didn't know if there's anyone present that you wanted to invite an opportunity to speak on this matter.
Well, I thought they would have indicated they wanted to be sworn in. I can ask. Is there anyone additionally who would like to speak on this matter present here today? Okay, thank you. Do I have a motion to close the public hearing and re-enter the Board of Adjustment meeting?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, we have closed the public hearing on this matter and re-entered the Board of Adjustment meeting. We have before us an application for a variance on behalf of the Reinthaler family. This is a lot at 5 Firestone Drive. They are asking for a variance from the 60-foot golf course setback for an encroachment of approximately 12 feet in order to build a family room and patio. We have before us a letter submitted by Bob Farron on behalf of the Pinehurst Resort. He's the Director of Golf Course Maintenance and Ground Management, indicating that he has visited the property, that the variance will not interfere with golf operations at number 7, is well back from the playable area of the 18th hole, and that the resort has no objections to the approval of this application. Is there any discussion by the board at this time?
I would say that I would move that we approve the variance, and it's consistent with what we've done in other cases where the golf course has submitted letters to us telling us it's not interfering with play. I think the unusual configuration of the property does create a bit of a hardship, or creates the condition necessary for the variance.
Any other discussion?
And for future use, since I won't be around for future meetings, these peculiarities of golf front and lakefront houses come up all the time. They should receive a little more consideration than maybe the plain rectangular lot that somebody wants to modify a little bit. Thank you.
We have several options before us. The standard of review with which we can operate, first, we have to find that there's a necessary hardship that would result from the strict application of the ordinance. It is not necessary for the applicant to demonstrate that in the absence of the variance, no reasonable use could be made of the property. Second, the hardship results from the conditions that are peculiar to the property, such as location, size, or topography. Hardships resulting from personal circumstances, as well as hardships resulting from conditions that are common to the neighborhood or the general public, may not be the basis for granting a variance. Third, the hardship did not result from actions taken by the applicant or the property owner. The act of purchasing property with knowledge that circumstances exist that may justify granting the variance shall not be regarded as a self-creating hardship. And finally, the requested variance is consistent with the spirit, purpose, and intent of the ordinance, such that public safety is secured and substantial justice is achieved. We have options before us as a board. We can approve the variance. We can approve the variance with conditions. If we choose to do so, it will require 4 of our 5 votes. And we can also continue this meeting to another date for determination. We can also disapprove the variance. At this time, do we have a motion before the board?
I thought I had made a
No,
motion.
it was
Oh,
premature, and now I
Oh,
am
sorry.
asking for your
Okay.
motion.
Then I reiterate my motion that we grant the variance. Do I have to read all the,
No. Well, actually,
no and a
yes,
yes
you
at
do.
the same time.
You do. You do have
I
to.
would second the motion, however, I need to read the standards as to whether or not they have been resolved.
Please go ahead, Leo.
I would believe that Mr. Kelly would need to
Mr.
do that. He
Kelly,
made the motion.
you're on, David.
okay. So I do believe that unnecessary hardship.
Okay.
He's trying to help me.
Tag team.
Unnecessary hardship would result from the strict application of the ordinance. That the hardship does result from conditions that are peculiar to the property, given the topography, the topographic survey. The hardship did not result from actions taken by the applicant or property owner, and the requested variance is consistent with the spirit, purpose, and intent of the ordinance, and public safety is secured and substantial justice achieved.
Leo, are you seconding?
What did you say for the second standard?
The hardship does result from conditions that are peculiar to the property.
He said topography, but it also says such as, which would limit shapes.
I think the hardship results from the conditions that are peculiar to the property.
That's what I said.
Okay, well, see, I can't hear.
Oh,
In that regard, I'll second the motion.
thank you.
And we'll do a voice vote. Mr. Santawasso,
Approve.
Mr. Kelly,
Recommend granting?
Mr.
Recommend
Schreiber.
granting.
Recommend approval.
And I also recommend approval.
Thank you very much. I removed the sign.
Thank you. Why don't we take a 5-minute break so folks can visit the restroom as needed, and then we will enter into public hearing number 2. Oh, you really did it.
Oh, jeez.
At this time, I'd like to call this meeting of the June 6th Board of Adjustment back to order. The time is, oh goodness, 6:16 PM. At this time, I'm looking for a motion to recess from our regular meeting and enter into public hearing number 2.
So moved?
Second?
Second?
All in favor?
Aye?
Opposed?
We're missing Mr.
We're missing Leo. Wave at us, Leo. No. Okay, here he comes. Okay, opposed? There's the thumbs up. So at this time, we are moving from our regular meeting into public hearing number 2. I'd like to call forward anyone who needs to be sworn in to give testimony in regard to public hearing number 2. Can you please raise, Alex. Oh, I reordered them. I renumbered them. I did. I made an executive decision. Okay. At this time, please raise your right hand. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Thank you very much. Please be seated. I'm going to ask the board right now if there's any member who needs to recuse themselves due to ex parte communications, conflict of interest, financial interest in the outcome, or who have already made up their mind on this matter.
We have seen this in various forms in various boards, so there's a lot of precedent, a lot of information that we've received already. I'll keep an open mind, but
Yeah.
I mean, we have had a lot of information.
I agree. Thank you for bringing that into the public statement. As a reminder, our decision needs to be based on competent material and substantial evidence that is in the record. No additional admonitions regarding evidence. So at this time, I'm going to ask Alex to give us the background on this particular application.
Thank you once again. The purpose of this public hearing is to receive testimony for a variance request from Section 9.2A, Table of Dimensional Requirements for Pinehurst Elementary School at 100 Dundee Road. The property is located within the R10 Single Family Zoning District, further identified by Moore County Tax Reference Number 000248884. Specifically, the property owner, Moore County Schools, and the applicant representing such, Mr. John Barath, are requesting a variance to increase the maximum lot coverage from 40% to 45% of impervious coverage. Within your agenda packet and to be submitted as part of the record are the application, the applicant's justification for the standards of review. You have a cover sheet, existing conditions plan, site plan, proposed building elevations, the staff report, as well as the board's written decision that, like the previous public hearing, can be entered into the record and be executed based on the action by the Zoning Board of Adjustment. Again, Mr. Kelly, thank you for acknowledging the fact that this particular bulk of this application, not necessarily germane to this specific request, has been before various boards and commissions as it's trying to work its way through the process and certain levels of approval. There's a little bit more beefier background within your staff report. The most updated version of or a board approval that you guys may or may not be aware of is last week, following a favorable recommendation with conditions by the Planning and Zoning Board on the major site plan approval to Village Council. The Historic Preservation Commission held their meeting and reviewed the building elevations associated with this proposal, and a certificate of appropriateness was issued by the Historic Preservation Commission.
Thank you. Mr. Barath?
Good evening. Happy to be before you again here today because this is an exciting project for us. With us today, I have Hal Bone from Ratio Architects and Renee Pfeiffer from CLH Design. They will take you through the project. For the entry of the record, I'll let each one introduce themselves along with their credentials. My name is John Barath, Executive Officer for Moore County Schools. I'm also a registered architect in North Carolina. I've been practicing architecture since 1991, and since 1991 I've been involved in school design and construction.
My name's Hal Bowen. I'm a registered architect in North Carolina. I've got John beat by a year. I'm since 1990, so I guess I'm a little older than he is. Thank you. Happy to be here.
And I'm Renee Pfeiffer with CLH Design. I'm a licensed landscape architect and one of the principals of CLH Design and the project manager on the Pinehurst Elementary School site. So I will just go ahead and get into why we're here today. Like I said, Renee Pfeiffer, CLH Design. We're located at 400 Regency Forest Drive in Cary, North Carolina. We're here tonight to discuss the variance on the maximum impervious allowed within the R10 zoning district. The R10 zoning district, as you know, has a maximum allowed impervious of 40%. We're requesting a variance for an additional 5% increase of impervious area for a total of 45% impervious surface on a 12.65 acre site. The new school is designed for a capacity of 800 students, and to accommodate this student population and all required site program elements for the school to safely function and an increase of impervious surface from the 40% maximum is imperative. Limiting the impervious to 40% would hinder the functionality of this site and create a hardship to provide the required site program elements. The size of this site is significantly smaller than the more recent elementary schools in Moore County that have the same student population. And even though this site is smaller than those, it's still required to address all state and local requirements for fire apparatus access, on-site car stacking, bus stacking, staff and visitor parking, pedestrian circulation, and play areas. Some of the required site elements for Pinehurst Elementary School include 120 parking spaces for staff and visitor to meet the needs of the elementary school during school and as well as after-hours activities, adequate on-site vehicle stacking for drop-off and pickup, and we've worked with the NCDOT Municipal School Transportation Assistance Department on those requirements. We have a bus loop for student drop-off and pickup, and the incorporation of 6 bus parking spaces to serve this school. A 20-foot wide fire lane to provide adequate apparatus access to within 150 feet of all exterior portions of the building will be required. And lastly, sidewalks throughout the site for safe pedestrian movement to the building, around the site, and to the public right-of-ways. This site has served an elementary school for 50 years, and due to the progressing nature of rules and regulations for school site design, the maximum impervious requirement of 40% does not accommodate the 800-student school on a 12.65 acre site. The impervious surface has been reduced as much as possible. By allowing the additional 5% increase in impervious area, the site can be designed such that it provides safe and functional elementary school site for the residents of Pinehurst. And at this time, I'd welcome any questions you may have.
Yeah, it's on. I don't know if this is so much of a question as more of a statement. I mean, from what we've seen before in the presentation of the project, and a variance has been approved already for the height of the building, basically, if you're going to have an 800-person school on this site, the building needs to go up, and if you're going to incorporate the parking and the other appurtenances that support the facility, the amount of impervious surface exceeds what would normally be used on the site by 5%. So the option, if we wanted to get to 40% and not request a variance, we'd have to move some parking or some roadways off the site. That would be the option. And I don't know if anybody's been out there when school lets out, but what I think safety-wise, this is reasonable because it gets the traffic from on the road to on the site. And usually when you go by there, there's a huge traffic jam at the time school lets out because the folks come by to pick up their kids. So just give that background.
The statement is that there are a total of 51 spaces required, 2 spaces per classroom, and which would be 102 spaces. but you're providing a total of 120 spaces.
Correct.
So the additional 18 spaces are not technically required.
They're not required per the village code.
How much impervious surface, percentage-wise, do those 18 spaces that you're allocating for good cause take?
I had a calculator.
Makes
I could
sense? Yeah, I don't know if it makes sense.
tell you.
Yeah,
Off the top of my head, I don't know, but I could come up with that calculation within a minute.
I can't give an answer to that, but I can let you know why we have those spaces. Our schools also accommodate a lot of itinerant people that come through the building, counselors, school nurses, our SROs. We do not have one per school. We'd like to get to that point at some point here in the near future. But we have a lot of itinerant staff that come and go with our schools. They do pull-out activities, whether they're in counseling rooms or in resource rooms throughout the school. And so we experience a higher number of, I should say, occupants in the school on a typical day than what your zoning code calculates for parking requirements. And so we want to make sure we can accommodate. The last thing we want to do with this is during the day, we don't want to see cars lined up on either roadway. The intent of this project of being in the site is to improve what we're experiencing there now. By pulling traffic off and bringing it on-site, it does increase our paving need, which increases our impervious area, but also creates a safer environment, bringing them off the road. So you will also notice that we bring buses off of one side and the cars are coming off another, so they're separate, they're away from each other. That's less opportunity for conflicts to occur. The activities that occur on the school site, we've talked about this in previous meetings. It'd be great if it was 20 acres. We are working within a very confined urban site of under 13 acres here. We have done a lot of work with the architects and the engineers to minimize that footprint on here by going two-story where we could, by making sure we're being efficient in our circulation patterns to condense and to keep that as tight as possible. Beyond this, we are very supportive and confident that this is going to be a safe environment and at the same time fulfill the needs for instruction at the school. And it does require the requested variance of 5%.
Well, I don't want to make a case for you because that's not my function, but I'm just looking at the fourth requirement you have to meet. So the requested variance is consistent. What you're trying to do is to, if you will, do the right thing for the community and for the surrounding area, and in doing so, you bump up against a impervious service situation. So trying, okay, thank you.
Are there other organizations that will be using school facilities after hours?
Absolutely. All our school facilities are available for public use. We have facility use guidelines that the board adopts every year for that purpose and use.
And the the parking spaces that are proposed on the site plan are adequate to support those uses?
From what we have currently experienced at the current site, yes, it would. We will run into challenges, I'll admit that on certain activities, certain days. Let's take the first day of school, for example, where everyone wants to drive their student to school and get a picture in front of the school. We will experience some congestion there. When you have maybe a grade promotion event that you're going to hold in the gymnasium and the parents and grandparents and aunts and uncles come for that event, we will find some congestion. Those are very few and rare throughout the 180-day school year.
Thank you.
Yes, there we go. Are we at the point in the project development where we've calculated that the infiltration basin capacity results in no net increase in runoff?
That's right.
Due to the project?
Yes, we are.
Okay, so you sized that because
Yes,
there were
sized
some
it
concerns
appropriately.
from some of the citizens about, rainfall and storm event, and then we're going to have some runoff, and it's going to create some flooding problems. So you've went back and validated that?
Yes.
Understood. Thank you.
We decided to.
And to further, Mr. Kelly, to carry that a little further, those calculations have been submitted, and they are currently under review by the village engineer. So yes, they have, I can attest they've gotten that far.
Question that I had, given the footprint that you all need to work with to achieve the population at the school that's required, can you speak to whether or not you all looked at materials that might impact the impervious surface calculation?
Such as permeable pavers,
Exactly.
things like that. We did at the beginning of the project. The site was such that we could not get the overflow of the permeable pavers to operate. So we went into an infiltration basin. So we're catching everything in pipes and then taking it to the infiltration basin, which we did get additional infiltration rates to verify that those rates will work with what we just spoke of, so that the runoff does not increase from what is there currently.
Thank you. At this time, does anyone else on the board have questions for the applicant? All right, thank you very much. So do we have a motion to close the public hearing and re-enter our Board of Adjustment meeting?
Public comment?
Oh, I'm sorry. Once again, as no one came forward to be sworn in, I will ask, does anyone from the audience wish to make a comment? No? Okay, thank you. Do I have a motion to close the public hearing and re-enter the Board of Adjustment meeting?
So moved. Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, at this time, we are closing the public hearing and re-entering our regular Board of Adjustment meeting. To summarize the facts before us, we have, I'm going to sit up, falling over. We have a variance application from the, let's see now, which one are we on? For the, let's see now, the variance is for the table dimensional requirements for Pinehurst Elementary School at 100 Dundee Road. This property is located in the R10 Single Family Zoning District. Specifically, the property owner, Moore County Schools, and applicant John Barath are requesting a variance to increase the maximum lot coverage from 40% to 45% impervious coverage. Is there any discussion amongst the board at this time? Okay, we have several options before us. As with our last applicant, our standards of review, there must be one, a finding of unnecessary hardship that would result from the strict application of the ordinance. It shall not be necessary to demonstrate that in the absence of the variance, no reasonable use can be made of the property. 2, the hardship results from conditions that are peculiar to the property, such as a location, size, or topography. Hardships resulting from personal circumstances, as well as hardships resulting from conditions that are common to the neighborhood or general public, may not be the basis for granting the variance. 3, the hardship did not result from actions taken by the applicant or the property owner. And 4, the requested variance is consistent with the spirit, purpose, and intent of the ordinance such that public safety is secured and substantial justice is achieved. We have options before us. The first is to approve the variance. The second, to approve with conditions, or to continue the meeting to another date for a determination, or to deny the variance application. Approval requires 4 votes. At this time, do I have a motion before us?
Yes. I move that we approve the variance request for the property at 100 Dundee Road with the following findings of fact: that unnecessary hardship would result from the strict application of the ordinance, that the hardship results from conditions that are peculiar to the property, such as size. The hardship did not result from actions taken by the applicant or property owner, and that the requested variance is consistent with the spirit, purpose, and intent of the ordinance, such that public safety is secured and substantial justice is achieved.
Do
I
have
would
a
second the motion.
Okay, we have a motion on the floor, seconded by Mr. Santowasso. Can we have a voice vote, please? Mr. Santowasso.
Yes.
Mr. Kelly.
I recommend we grant the variance.
Mr. Schreiber.
I recommend we approve.
Mr. Marsh.
Recommend granting?
And I recommend approval. At this time, do we have oh no, we don't need to do that. Okay, Other business. Before we close, I would like to recognize the service of Mike Marsh. Mike Marsh is ending his
Have another
term
piece of
and
pizza.
stepping down from the Board of Adjustment. So thank you very much for your service, Mike.
Thank you,
And
Mike.
we'd also like to welcome Cindy Burnett, who graciously brought pizza, who will be joining us next month as a regular member of the Board of Adjustment. Our next meeting date, if a new matter is before us, will be Thursday, July 11th, 2019, at 4:30 PM. Do we have a motion to adjourn?
So moved?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Meeting is adjourned.